All right, so I want to start this off by being completely honest with you. I have a liquid net worth right now sitting around $1.1 million. I am 27 years old, and I refuse to buy a house. Most of my money is sitting in the stock market, high-yield cash accounts, and a little bit in Bitcoin. I do not like real estate right now. In fact, I sold my own property back in 2024, and let me tell you something. That was the single best financial move I have made in years. I offloaded that thing and it saved me from losing probably 30 to 40,000 extra dollars if I had held on to it. I know that sounds crazy to some of you. I know the second I say I don't want to buy a house, a lot of people are going to click off and think I am just some weird guy who doesn't get it. But just give me a few minutes because the math I am about to show you might honestly change how you think about home ownership forever. We have all been sold this weird dream our whole lives. You know, the one grow up, get a good job, buy a house, settle down, and that is success. That is the American dream, right? Except I think it is honestly kind of stupid for the average person in their 20s and 30s. Look, I get it. If you are someone who wants to live in the exact same location for 20 or 30 years, and you just want a place to raise your kids and never move, then sure, home ownership can work as a forced savings account because you are paying down an asset over time. That makes sense. But for most people my age who are trying to actually build wealth and grow their net worth and live a flexible life, I genuinely believe buying a house right now is a very, very silly idea. And here's the funny part. If you have followed my content for a while, you know I actually run a real estate lead generation business. My whole identity is kind of tied up in people buying and selling houses. I literally make money off the real estate market, and I am still telling you to think twice before jumping in. That should tell you something. So let me walk you through my personal experience first, because I think that is the best place to start. I bought a pre-construction property back in August 2020 at the time. It felt like the smartest move. Interest rates were low, everyone was buying, prices were going up fast. I put down a big down payment, paid all those closing costs that nobody warns you about, and then I became a homeowner. And honestly, it kind of sucked from day one. A water pipe broke in that house when it was brand new. I didn't even have to pay to fix it because it was under warranty, but just the mental weight of dealing with that crap was exhausting. I had so much other stuff going on in my life and my career, and suddenly I had to spend my weekend dealing with a plumber and calling the builder and stressing out over something I didn't even want to think about. Nobody was even living in that house at the time, and I was already losing my mind over it. That was the moment I started questioning whether home ownership was actually for me. And while I was dealing with all that headache, my portfolio kept growing. The money I had tied up in that house could have been working so much harder for me in the market. So I made the call, I sold it in 2024 and went fully liquid. And thank God I did, because the real estate market right now is an absolute disaster in my opinion. There is a record number of millionaires choosing to rent instead of buy right now, and that is finally being seen as a legitimate strategy. Wealthy people are doing this. Financially intelligent people are doing this, and I am going to show you exactly why. Let me break down the math first, because numbers don't lie. There is something called the 5% rule that I don't think it's talked about enough. Take any home, S value, and multiply it by 5%. That number represents what home ownership actually costs you per year. When you factor in property taxes, maintenance, insurance, all the things that break, and the opportunity cost of not putting your money into other assets. Divide that by 12, and that is your actual monthly carrying cost. So let's say you are looking at a $500,000 house. 5% of that is 25 grand per year, or about 2,000 bucks a month in real cost. Now, if you rent a comparable place for less than 2 grand a month, you are literally losing money by buying. In most markets right now, you can rent for 30 to 40% less than what ownership actually costs. Not what a realtor tells you it costs, but the actual net numbers after you factor everything in. Let me give you a real example. Say you rent a place for $2,500 a month. That is $30,000 a year all in. No hidden costs, no surprise repairs, no property tax increases, just your rent. And that is it. Now let us look at that same $500,000 house with a 6.5% mortgage rate, which is pretty standard. Right now, your monthly mortgage payment alone is around $3,000. And in those first 10 years, 70 to 80% of that payment is pure interest. So you are throwing away around $200 to $2,400 per month right there. That already matches your entire rent payment. Then on top of that, you have maintenance costs, property taxes, insurance, and all the other boring stuff that adds up fast. You are looking at $30,000 to $40,000 per year that you spend and builds you zero equity and zero wealth in those early years. Meanwhile, as a renter like me, I pay $2,300 a month and I don't worry about any of that. I have freedom. I have mobility. When something breaks, I just laugh and text my landlord. It gets fixed for free in a couple days and I don't have to think about it at all. So who is really throwing away money here? Now let me get into point number 2, which is the opportunity cost. This is the part that most people completely ignore, and it is huge. Let us talk about the down payment alone. Say you put $100,000 down on a house. That money is now locked up in an asset that historically returns maybe 3 to 4% a year, and I am being generous with that number. That includes the insane appreciation we saw when I bought my property back in 2020, which was not normal at all. Now imagine you took that same 100 grand and put it into the S&P 500 instead. Historical average return is about 10% annually. Over 30 years, that 100,000 becomes $1.7 million. Even if you use a conservative 8% return, you are still looking at over $1 million bucks. And that is just the opportunity cost of your down payment alone. Now think about all the other money you save by renting instead of owning let. Let's say you save $1,000 a month by renting cheaper than owning. You invest that $1,000 every month for 30 years at 8%. That is another $1.5 million. So by buying that house, you could be giving up $2 to $3 million in wealth over your lifetime. For what? For the privilege of saying you own something that the bank technically owns until you pay it off 30 years from now. That doesn't sound like a good trade to me. We have not even talked about closing costs and all the fees that come with buying a house. I promise you, if you have never purchased a property before, those costs rack up very, very quickly. We are talking up to 80 grand sometimes that just evaporates the moment you sign the papers. If you invested that money at a very conservative rate, instead your house would need to appreciate by 16% just for you to break even on those costs alone. That is insane when you think about it. Versus renting and investing the difference and staying liquid the whole time. And that brings me to point number 3. I think liquidity, especially for our generation, is the new wealth. This is something people do not talk about enough. The highest earners right now are switching jobs every 2 to 4 years and getting 10 to 20% raises each time. Remote work has opened up crazy opportunities. AI is disrupting entire industries. If you want to capitalize on any of this, you need to be mobile. You need to be able to pivot. You need to have cash available just in case an opportunity comes up. You cannot be house rich and cash poor. That makes no sense for someone in their 20s. Let me give you a real scenario. Say you get an incredible job offer in another city and it comes with a $50,000 raise. That is a life-changing opportunity, but you own a house. I see this all the time with people in Toronto. They bought a place back in 2020 when things looked good, and now they are stuck commuting 2 hours each way every single day because they cannot sell without losing money. They spend 4 hours a day in traffic. They lose so much money on gas and maintenance and their own time. And if they want to sell, that process takes months and costs them 8 to 10% in transaction fees and carrying costs. Or maybe you want to start a business and you need capital. Your wealth is trapped in your house. You could do a cash out refinance or a home equity line of credit, but now you are paying interest just to access your own money. That is crazy. Meanwhile, I have over $1 million liquid, and when an opportunity comes up, I can move immediately. I want to buy the dip in the stock market, which I have done a ton of times. Done. I see a business opportunity. Sweet, I can fund that. I want to run some ads for my business. Boom, I can get that done right away. The flexibility and freedom of being liquid is worth more than any potential home appreciation in your 20s. I am not saying this applies to someone who is 50 or 60 years old. At that point, yeah, take some chips off the table and buy a place if you want stability. But in today's world, the biggest financial wins come from being able to move fast and capitalize on opportunities. Being locked into a house is like playing a game with a ball and chain on your ankle. It anchors you down and limits your options. Point number 4. And I did not really want to talk about this because I am not a big fan of trying to time the market. But honestly, the timing right now is terrible for buying. Look at the numbers. Mortgage rates are still sitting at around 6 to 7%. Compare that to the 3% rates people were getting in 2020 and 2021. That difference on a $500,000 loan costs you an extra $1,000 a month. Over the life of the mortgage, that is hundreds of thousands of extra dollars in interest. Home prices are still near all-time highs in most markets. Sure, they have come down a little from the peak, but they are still stupidly inflated compared to historical norms. And inventory is starting to increase, which means prices are likely to soften even more. So you would be locking in a terrible interest rate on an overpriced asset in a slowing market. Even if you can technically afford it, why would you do that? Why not stay liquid, keep investing, and wait for a better entry point if you really want to buy a house someday? That is exactly what I realized in 2024. I looked at where the market was heading and I said, I need to get liquid right now. I need to sell this thing and get it off my hands. The mental freedom alone was worth it. Nobody talks about the mental weight of owning a home. Every time something breaks or property taxes go up or the market dips, you feel it. It stresses you out. As a renter, I sleep like a baby because none of that is my problem. And here's the thing, millionaires are renting at record rates right now. That is not a coincidence. Wealthy people understand. Opportunity costs better than anyone. They understand what is called a liquidity premium. They would rather own cash flowing assets like dividend stocks, growth stocks, Bitcoin businesses, or just diversified portfolios. They do not want their money tied up in something illiquid like a personal residence. If you talk to real estate investors, a lot of them rent their own place too. Why? Because they want their money working in income producing properties, not locked up in the place they sleep at night. That is a whole different conversation. If you want to own investment properties, that is one thing. There are deals to be done out there. But I am talking about buying a personal residence for most people in their 20s and 30s. The stigma around renting is completely gone at the high end. In fact, it is becoming more of a status symbol in some circles. Some of my higher net worth buddies are all renting. Right now, it shows that you are financially sophisticated enough to look past the old school narrative and see what actually makes sense. Home ownership in this market is kind of a scam, if I am being honest, and more people are waking up to that reality, but a lot of people who are in their late 30s and 40s or the older generation just do not see it yet. Beyond all the numbers and the math, there is something nobody wants to admit. Home ownership just kind of sucks in a lot of ways. You spend your weekends doing maintenance, something breaks, and it is your problem. Property taxes go up and you are stuck paying them. The market crashes and your home value drops 20% and you just lost your entire down payment in equity alone. As a renter, none of that touches me. Something breaks, I text my landlord and it is fixed for free. I want to try living somewhere else. I moved about 40 minutes away last year just because I wanted to experience a new city. I packed my stuff and left. No stress, no months-long selling process, no transaction fees. I travel a lot more now too. Being able to just shut the door, turn the key, and walk away without a single worry is incredible. There is a quality of life component that gets completely ignored when people push the narrative that home ownership is the ultimate dream for me personally. Freedom alone is priceless. Now I know some of you might still have objections. You might be thinking, but you are not building equity. Fair point. But what good is equity that you cannot access without paying interest or selling your house? That is not real wealth, that is trapped value. Yes, it is yours on paper, but you cannot do anything with it, unless you jump through hoops. I see this all the time. People say, oh, my house appreciated 50% because I bought in 2020. That is great, but where are you going to go? You sell your house and get cash in hand, but then you have to buy another property somewhere else at these inflated prices. It does not really change your situation. You are just trading one expensive house for another. I would rather have liquid wealth that I can deploy however and whenever I want. Another objection people bring up is that owning a house forces you to save. I get that argument, and I mentioned it at the beginning, but if you need a mortgage to force financial discipline, I think there is a bigger problem there, my friend. That is a behavior issue, not an investment strategy. A disciplined person who rents cheap and invests the difference is going to come out way ahead. I am a big believer in keeping your monthly burn low. That is how you actually build wealth over time. That is how you get rich. And someone might say that real estate is an inflation hedge. Sure, but stocks and Bitcoin also hedge against inflation and they are liquid. Plus property taxes and maintenance costs also inflate over time, so that eats into your returns way more than people realize. So to wrap this all up, I want to be clear about something. I am not saying nobody should ever buy a house. If you plan to stay in one location forever, if you have a family and you want stability and you value having your own space and not dealing with landlords, I completely respect that. That is a personal decision and it might be the right move for you. If you have already maxed out every other investment vehicle and you just want to park some money in real estate to diversify, that is fine too. But for most people watching this, especially the young guys and girls out there trying to figure out their financial future, just listen to me for a second. If you are young, if you are career focused, if you are an entrepreneur, if you want to build serious wealth in your 20s and 30s, I genuinely believe buying a house right now is probably one of the biggest mistakes you could make. It ties up your capital, it limits your mobility, it comes with hidden costs nobody talks about, and it locks you into a liquid asset in a market that is honestly not great right now. I am not tying up my money in a house. I am staying liquid, and I have proof that it is working for me. I hope that by the end of this video you can see why that might be a smarter move for you too. Thanks for sticking with me through this one. I know it ran a little long, but I wanted to make sure I covered everything properly. As always, I am just a normal dude sharing what I have learned from my own mistakes, and I hope it helps you make better decisions with your money. I want to see you win. Peace.